Alan Watts exposes the biggest lie about humanity. What if I told you that almost everything you've ever believed about yourself, about what it means to be human, is a lie? Not a malicious lie, not one told to hurt you, but a lie so deeply embedded in our culture, our language, our education, that most of us never even think to question it. We just live it. We live the lie. And the wildest part, we think it's truth. We think it's reality. But today, I want you to see what Alan Watts saw. I want you to hear what he tried to tell us, not with a preacher's urgency or a scientist's facts, but with the simple clarity of someone who realized something so profound, so obvious, that once you see it, you can't unsee it. You see, humanity's biggest lie is this: that you are separate from the world, that you are a lonely, isolated ego trapped inside a skin bag, navigating a cold, indifferent universe, that you were born into this world rather than arose from it. Think about that for a second. That assumption alone, I was born into the world, it sounds harmless, even poetic, but it carries a massive philosophical weight. It implies that the world was here, and then you came along, like an alien dropped into a foreign land. From that idea springs everything: the fear, the competition, the endless striving to find your purpose, to make your mark, to prove your worth. Because if you're separate, if you're an invader in this universe, of course you'd feel the need to justify your existence.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
But what if that's all upside down? Alan Watts said, you didn't come into this world, you came out of it like a wave from the ocean. You are not a stranger here. That changes everything, doesn't it? If you're not a stranger, if you're not separate, then maybe you don't need to conquer the world. Maybe you are the world, looking at itself through human eyes. And if that's true, then the entire model we've been taught of self, of other, of life as a conflict between the two, is built on an illusion. Let's pause. Really pause. Ask yourself this: who are you when you're not thinking? When there is no inner commentary, no labels, no judgments, just being? Are you still you? Or is there something deeper, something more fluid, that your name and your story can't quite capture? This is the beginning of what Watts tried to awaken in us. The realization that the ego, the I, we cling to so fiercely isn't real in the way we think it is. It's not a thing, it's a process, a mental habit, a story we tell ourselves over and over again. And like any good story, it needs a protagonist, a hero, a center of gravity. So we create the I. But here's the twist: that I is an illusion. There is no fixed self. And yet, because we believe in it so deeply, we suffer deeply. We fear death because we think it means the end of me. We chase success because we think it will strengthen me. We avoid pain because it threatens me. But what if the me is just a mask? Philosophers call this the illusion of the self. Neuroscientists too are starting to catch up. They look for the self in the brain and find nothing. No central command center, no singular identity. Just a network of processes, thoughts, memories, sensations. The self is like a rainbow, beautiful, but not a thing you can touch. It's a pattern, not a substance. And this illusion of separateness, this lie that we are isolated egos, isn't just a personal problem. It's the root of global suffering. It's what allows us to exploit nature, to harm others, to wage war. Because if I'm separate from you, then your pain doesn't matter. If I'm separate from the earth, then its destruction doesn't matter. But if I'm not separate, if I am the earth, if I am you, then suddenly compassion isn't a moral obligation. It's a natural expression of understanding. Do you see how deep this goes? This isn't just philosophy. This is liberation. Because once you see through the illusion, you no longer have to carry the burden of being a separate, isolated self. You no longer have to strive to prove your worth, because your worth is already in being. You no longer have to fear death because the ocean doesn't die when a wave crashes, it just becomes the ocean again. Imagine living from that place. Imagine waking up each day not as a tiny ego trying to survive, but as the universe temporarily appearing in human form just to experience itself. Every breath becomes sacred. Every interaction becomes a dance. Every problem becomes part of the great unfolding. So I ask you, what would your life look like if you truly believed you were not separate from the world? Think about that. Let it land. Why the ego is the master illusion and how it secretly controls everything you do. Let's go even deeper. If the biggest lie about humanity is that we're separate from the world, then the ego is the machinery that keeps that lie alive. It's the centerpiece of the illusion, the magician's trick that convinces us we are something solid, constant, and independent. But here's the truth. The ego isn't evil. It's not your enemy, it's just misunderstood. It's a tool that was meant to serve a function, to help us navigate the practical side of life. But somewhere along the way, it became the master instead of the servant. It hijacked the narrative. And now, most of us are living under its rule without even knowing it. The ego feeds on identification. It needs something to attach itself to your name, your job, your social status, your beliefs, your nationality, your trauma, your achievements. It doesn't care what the label is as long as there is a label. Because without labels, the ego has no form. It dissolves. And that's what it fears most: non-existence. So it will do anything to stay alive. It creates conflict just to feel separate. It clings to pain just to feel real. It even builds entire worldviews just to maintain the illusion of control. I think about how often your mind says something like, "I am not good enough," or "I need to be better," or "I can't let them see the real me." Who is this I that's narrating? Who is it talking to? This inner dialogue, this constant commentary, is the sound of the ego reinforcing itself. It's like a loop that keeps spinning, not because it's true, but because we never stop to question the voice. We assume that voice is us, but what if it's not? Alan Watts once said, "Trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth." The self that tries to define the self is a paradox. It's a hall of mirrors. And yet we spend our entire lives in that hall, chasing reflections, trying to polish the image of ourselves that we think will finally make us whole. But wholeness never comes through addition. It comes through realization, through the understanding that you were never broken to begin with. Let's get practical. How does the ego control your life in ways you don't even see? It shows up in your relationships, in your desire to be right, to win arguments, to prove your point. It shows up in your career, in the need to climb higher, to be recognized, to be better than others. It even shows up in your spirituality. Yes, your ego can wear a spiritual mask too. It can say, "Look how enlightened I am," or "I meditate more than you," or "I've let go of ego," all while secretly strengthening itself through that very claim. That's the trickiest part. It can hide in the very act of trying to get rid of it. But here's the secret: you don't need to kill the ego. You just need to see it. Awareness is enough. The moment you become aware of the ego without judgment, without resistance, it loses its grip. Because the ego can't survive in the light of presence. It thrives in unconsciousness. So the more aware you become of its patterns, the less power it has over you. Let me ask you something. Have you ever caught yourself acting out a role? Maybe in a job interview, or a date, or even with friends, have you ever felt like you were performing a version of yourself? That's ego. It's not that the act was fake, maybe it was helpful, maybe even necessary, but it wasn't you. It was a mask. And the problem isn't the mask, it's forgetting that it's a mask. And this is where the suffering comes in. Because when we believe we are the mask, we start fearing anything that threatens it. We fear failure, rejection, judgment because they bruise the image. And we chase validation, success, admiration because they inflate the image. But all of it is about the image, not the truth. And deep down, we know this. That's why even when we get what we want, we still feel empty, because we fed the mask, not the soul. So, what's the way out? It's not about ego death, it's about ego integration. It's about realizing that the ego is just a part of the play. It's a character in the dream, not the dreamer. You don't have to destroy it. You just have to stop mistaking it for who you are. You can say, "Ah, that's my ego speaking," and smile. You can watch its games without getting caught in them. You can let it exist, but not let it run the show. And when you do that, when you stop identifying with the ego, you begin to notice something miraculous, the presence underneath, the stillness that's always been there, waiting. That presence isn't anxious, it isn't striving, it doesn't need to prove anything. It just is. It's the real you, the part of you that was never born and will never die. The part that watches, that witnesses, that is. So let me leave you with this. If you are not your thoughts, not your roles, not your story, then what are you? Sit with that question, not to get an answer, but to feel the silence it leaves behind. The myth of control, why letting go changes everything. We've been taught from the beginning that control is power. That to be successful, fulfilled, or even safe, we must control our environment, our future, our emotions, and above all ourselves. It's baked into our culture. We micromanage our schedules, strategize our lives like chessboards, and mentally rehearse every outcome to make sure we stay ahead of the chaos. But what if I told you that this very obsession with control is what keeps us trapped? That the more we try to grip life with a closed fist, the more it slips through our fingers? Alan Watts pointed out something revolutionary. The more we struggle for life, the less we have of it. And that hits hard, doesn't it? Because we spend so much time trying to manage life that we forget to live it. We're always waiting for the next moment to be better than this one. We say, "I'll relax once I get this done," or "I'll be happy when I achieve that." But life doesn't wait. It's happening now and we're missing it because we're too busy trying to control it. But here's the paradox: the moment you let go of control, you begin to experience true freedom. That doesn't mean you become passive or careless. Letting go isn't the same as giving up. It means releasing the illusion that you can predict or manipulate outcomes to guarantee your emotional safety. It means trusting the process even when it doesn't make sense. It means dancing with life instead of wrestling it. I think about how rivers flow. They don't force their way through rocks, they move around them. Nature never hurries, yet everything gets done. There's a profound intelligence in letting things be, in allowing life to unfold without constant interference. And yet, we resist this natural flow because we're terrified of uncertainty. We think that without control, everything will fall apart. But what if the opposite is true? What if our need to control is precisely what's causing the disconnection, the anxiety, the burnout? Let me ask you something deeply personal. When was the last time you truly surrendered? Not gave up, surrendered. When you let an experience be what it was without trying to fix it, label it, or escape from it. when you allowed your emotions to come and go like waves without grasping or resisting, when you trusted not because you had proof everything would be okay, but because you knew that not being okay was also part of the journey. Control is rooted in fear. And fear is always about the future, about what might happen, what could go wrong, what might be lost. But real life is only ever happening now. The past is gone. The future doesn't exist yet. All we ever have is this moment, and control pulls us out of it. It distracts us with plans, expectations, and contingencies. Yet, ironically, when we stop trying to control the moment, we become fully present in it, and that presence is where our power truly lies. Alan Watts often used the metaphor of music. He said life is not a journey with a destination, but more like a song. The point of a song isn't to get to the end, it's to play, to express, to feel. Nobody listens to a symphony just to hear the final note. And yet, we live our lives like we're trying to rush to the end, to some imagined point where we'll finally arrive. But life isn't about arriving. It's about dancing through the notes, feeling the rhythm, even when it's offbeat. Letting go also means letting go of identity. We cling to roles: parent, artist, leader, failure, survivor. These identities give us a sense of stability, of control over who we are. But what if you're not any of those things? What if those are just costumes you wear in different scenes of the play? Who are you when all the labels fall away? That's a terrifying question for the ego, but it's freedom for the soul. And make no mistake, letting go is hard. It feels like a death. The death of who you thought you were. The death of your plans, your safety nets, your illusions. But every death is also a birth. When the caterpillar dissolves, it doesn't become a better caterpillar, it becomes something entirely new. So maybe the pain of letting go isn't a failure. Maybe it's metamorphosis. So here's a radical question for you, one that could shift your entire paradigm. What would happen if you stopped trying to control your life and instead let it express itself through you? Not as something you own or manage, but as something you are. What if you started seeing yourself not as the doer, but as the happening? Not separate from life, but life itself. When we surrender control, we enter into partnership with the universe. We begin to notice synchronicities, subtle alignments, the way doors open when we stop forcing them. We begin to trust the intelligence of life, not because it always gives us what we want, but because it always gives us what we need to wake up, to grow, to return to ourselves. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, ask yourself, am I trying to control this moment, or am I allowing it to be what it is? That simple awareness can shift everything. That's where peace begins, not by dominating the world, but by surrendering to the mystery of it. The final illusion, why you were never born and will never die. Let's go all the way now. The edge of thought. The place where words begin to fall apart and silence becomes more honest than speech. This is where Alan Watts was always pointing, not just toward a new way of thinking, but toward the collapse of thinking itself, toward the realization that even death, the great fear, the ultimate unknown, is part of the same illusion as the ego, the self, and control. Because once you realize you're not separate from life, once you see the ego as a role and control as a myth, then death reveals itself for what it truly is, not an ending, but a transformation, not a disappearance, but a return. You were never born in the way you think, not as an isolated, independent entity suddenly dropped into a universe already in progress. No, you emerged like a wave from the ocean, like a leaf from a tree. You were not created from the outside. You are the universe expressing itself as a person, just as a flower is the earth expressing itself in color and scent. And if that's true, then death cannot be the enemy. Because how can the wave die if it is the ocean? This is the final illusion we must break, the illusion of birth and death. We are so obsessed with beginnings and endings, with timelines and lifespans, that we forget to ask what underlies all of it. What is it that is aware of being born? What is it that witnesses death? That presence that ever-present awareness doesn't come and go. Thoughts come and go. Bodies come and go. But awareness, it's always there. It's the screen on which the entire movie of your life plays out, but it is not the movie itself. Have you ever looked into a mirror and felt a strange disconnect, like the person looking back wasn't entirely you? That's a glimpse beyond identity. That's the awareness peeking through. It's not tied to your age, your face, your memories. It just is. And that isness is what you actually are. Not the story, but the space in which the story unfolds. Alan Watts would often remind us that the fear of death is really the fear of losing the ego. Because once the ego dissolves, once the story ends, we panic, but what's left? And the answer is terrifying to the ego, but liberating to the soul. What's left is everything. What's left is the same presence that was there before you were born, the same presence that will be there after the body drops. It's not personal. It's not a continuation of the me. It is beyond names, beyond form. It is being itself. But don't just believe this. Feel it. Test it. Sit in silence and ask yourself, what remains when I stop identifying with thought? When you no longer say, I am this or I am that, what is left? That's silence. That's still, alert awareness. That is the real you. And here's the wildest part: it was never born, so it can never die. It is not in time. It watches time. It is not your life, it is life itself. And so, if we are not born in the way we thought, and we do not die in the way we fear, then everything changes. The pressure to leave a legacy fades. The fear of insignificance dissolves. You no longer live to prove something, you live to experience, to play, to love, to express the infinite through the finite, knowing that even the most fleeting moment is an expression of eternity. You see, the lie was never just that we are separate from the world. The lie was that we are separate from being. We thought we were something in life, but we are life. Life looking at itself, listening to itself, wondering about itself. And when we stop clinging to the illusion of me, something beautiful happens. We wake up. Not in the future, not after death, but right now. So here's the final question. I'll leave you with one that Alan Watts spent his life inviting us to ask. Even if it has no answer, if you were never born and you never die, what are you doing here? Not as a philosophical exercise, but as a real, felt inquiry. What is the point of this particular wave, this particular dance, this particular dream? And maybe the answer is simple: to be, just to be, to see, to feel, to laugh, to cry, to taste the fullness of existence without needing to own it, explain it, or control it. To be the universe, briefly aware of itself before dissolving back into the mystery. That's not a tragedy. That's poetry. And maybe, just maybe, that's the truth behind the biggest lie about humanity.